Left in a collapsed shack, please don't leave us. The cowboy made a choice that changed everything. The wind had been blowing since before sunrise. It came across the flat open land without asking permission, moving through the dry grass, bending it low, then letting it stand again. The sky was the color of old bone, not quite white, not quite gray, and the sun sat behind a thin sheet of cloud that gave no comfort and no shade. Eli Cade had been riding since the night before. He was not a young man anymore. His back told him that every morning when he climbed into the saddle. His hands told him that when the cold came in, the way it was doing now, moving through the leather of his gloves and settling into his knuckles like something that had decided to stay. He was somewhere past 50 and had stopped counting the years the way a man stops counting something when the number stops meaning anything useful. His horse, a brown mare named Soot, moved steady beneath him. She was old too. They had that in common. They did not need to speak to understand each other. When Eli shifted his weight slightly to the right, she went right. When he breathed out long and slow, she slowed her walk. They had been together 11 years and had learned each other the way two people who live in a small house eventually learn each other, not all at once, but in pieces, over time. He was heading toward the town of Garner's Flat. It was not a town he liked. It had 2 saloons and 1 church, and the church did less business than either saloon. The people there were not bad people, most of them, just people who had stopped trying to be good and had settled somewhere in the middle where it was easier. He had worked there. A rancher named Hollis Drum wanted 3 horses moved from one property to another, about 40 miles south. It was simple work, the kind of work Eli had done so many times that his body could do it while his mind was somewhere else entirely. He was thinking about nothing in particular when Soot slowed. He did not pull her reins. She slowed on her own, which she only did when something caught her attention. Eli sat up straighter and looked around. The land was flat here, with some scrub brush and a line of dead-looking trees to his left that followed what had once been a creek. To his right, there was a rise in the ground, not quite a hill, more like the earth had taken a breath and held it. And at the base of that rise, partially hidden by the brush and partly by the way the light was falling, there was a structure. Or what had been a structure. It was a shack, the kind built fast by someone who needed walls and a roof and did not have much to work with. At some point, part of the roof had come down. One side wall had given way. The whole thing leaned to the right like a man who has been hit and is deciding whether to fall. The wood was gray and split. There was no smoke, no fire, no sign that anyone had been near it in a long time. Except. Eli's eyes moved slowly over the structure. He had spent enough years reading land and reading situations to know that you did not hurry this part. You looked careful. You let things show themselves. There. On the ground near the open side of the shack, where the wall had fallen away. Something that was not brush and was not wood and was not any part of the building. He rode closer. The 2 children were huddled together against the back wall of the shack, the only wall still fully standing. They were pressed into the corner, their knees pulled up, their arms wrapped around each other. A girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old. A boy, smaller, maybe 5. Their clothes were thin and dirty and not right for the weather. The girl had a piece of torn blanket pulled over both of them, but it was small and did not cover much. They looked at him when he rode up. They did not run. They did not have enough left in them to run. The girl's eyes were large and dark and she watched him the way a creature watches something that might be a threat and might be the last thing it sees, and has decided it does not have the energy to determine which. The boy had his face pressed against the girl's shoulder. He turned slightly to look at Eli, then turned back. Eli stopped Soot about 10 feet away. He did not get down immediately. He sat and looked at the children and let them look at him and did not make any sudden movement. "Hey," he said. His voice came out rougher than he intended. He cleared his throat. "Hey there." The girl did not answer. "My name is Eli," he said. "I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to sit here a minute." He sat. The wind moved over them all equally, not caring who was old and who was young and who was cold and who was tired. After a while, the girl spoke. "Are you the man our papa sent?" she asked. Her voice was dry, like she had not had water in some time. Eli felt something move through him. Something uncomfortable, the kind of feeling that comes when you understand a situation and the understanding is not good. "No," he said. "I don't know your papa. I was just riding through." The girl nodded slowly, as if this was what she had expected but had been hoping otherwise. "He went to get help," she said. "He said he would be back." "When did he go?" She looked at the boy, then back at Eli. "I don't know exactly. The sun went down 2 times since then. 2 days." Eli got down from the saddle. He moved slow and deliberate, the way you move around frightened animals and frightened children, which are not so different. He tied soot to a piece of the broken wall and walked toward the shack entrance, which was the open side where the wall had fallen. "Can I come a little closer?" he asked. The girl considered this. She was doing the thinking for both of them, that was clear. The boy was younger and exhausted and had given the job of deciding things to her. "Okay," she said. He walked to within a few feet of them and crouched down so he was not standing over them, which he thought might be better. Up close he could see how thin they were. Their faces had the hollow look of children who have not eaten enough, not for a while. The girl had a cut on her forehead that had dried and crusted over. The boy's lips were cracked and dry. "What's your name?" Eli asked. "Clara," the girl said. "He's Thomas. He doesn't talk much right now." "That's okay," Eli said. "How old are you, Clara?" 8, she said. "Thomas is 5. Are you hungry?" She looked at him very directly. "Yes," she said, as if this was a simple and obvious fact and there was no reason to say it any other way. He went back to Soot and opened his saddlebag. He had hardtack, which was not good, and dried strips of meat, which were better, and a canteen of water that was about half full. He brought all of it back and set it on the ground in front of them. Clara reached for the water first. She took a small drink, then held the canteen to Thomas's lips and helped him drink. She made sure he had enough before she took more herself. She was 8 years old and she was doing the things a mother does, because she had to. Eli watched this and felt the uncomfortable feeling again, deeper this time. He gave them the dried meat and watched them eat. He did not say anything while they ate because there was nothing useful to say while a child is eating who has not eaten in 2 days. Some things you let happen without putting words on top of them. When they had eaten, Clara looked at him again. "Are you going to take us somewhere?" she asked. "Where do you want to go?" he asked. "Somewhere not here," she said. That was honest. Eli respected honest. "What happened to the shack?" he asked. He looked up at the fallen wall, the collapsed part of the roof. It had not fallen recently, he could tell. The broken edges of the wood were weathered. This had happened before the children arrived, or at least some time ago. "It was like this when we got here," Clara said. "Papa said we would stay here while he fixed it, but then he went to get supplies and help and he hasn't come back." "Where did you come from before here?" She thought about this. "A long way. We traveled a long time. Before that we had a house but we had to leave it." Eli did not ask why. That story belonged to them and it was not his business. "Is your mama with you?" he asked carefully. Clara shook her head. She did not offer more and he did not ask. Thomas had fallen asleep against Clara's arm. The food and water had been enough to push him into sleep, which was what children's bodies did when they finally had something to work with. Clara watched her brother sleep for a moment, then looked back at Eli. "Papa is a good man," she said. "He was going to come back. Something must have happened." "I believe you," Eli said. And he did. He had no reason not to. Men did not always come back when they meant to. The land and the distance and the things that could go wrong were vast. What do we do now? Clara asked. He looked at her. 8 years old and asking practical questions because that was what the situation required. He thought about his ride to Garner's flat. He thought about Hollis' drum and the 3 horses. He thought about his back and his hands and his preference for not getting involved in things that were not his to be involved in. Then he thought about the girl who made sure her brother drank before she drank, and he stopped thinking about the rest of it. "I'm going to take you to town," he said. "There'll be people there who can help figure out where your papa went and what to do next." Clara studied him for a moment, deciding whether to trust this. She was not a child who trusted easily. That was clear. She had learned something out here in this collapsed shack about what trusting got you when the person you trusted didn't come back. "Will you stay with us until we find him?" she asked. It was not a question he had expected. It stopped him. He thought about what it cost him to say yes. He thought about what it cost her to ask. "I'll stay until you're safe," he said. "That's what I can promise." She nodded. "Okay," she said. "That's okay." He let her wake Thomas gently, and he watched how careful she was about it, how she spoke softly and held him while he came back to being awake and confused and then settled when he saw his sister's face. He thought about what this girl had carried in the 2 days since her father had gone. The fear of it. The responsibility of keeping her brother calm. The job of staying alive when you are 8 years old and do not know what else to do. He had not planned for any of this. He had planned for 40 miles of riding and 3 horses and a simple job. But plans were things you made before you knew what you were riding into. He helped Clara up, and then he picked Thomas up, who was still half asleep and did not protest, just rested his head on Eli's shoulder with the complete trust of a small child who has run out of resistance. Eli held him and was surprised by how light he was, and then not surprised, because he had not eaten enough. He set Thomas on Soot in front of the saddle and helped Clara up behind, then mounted behind her. It was a full load for an old mare, but Soot was steady and did not complain. They rode. Thomas fell back asleep within minutes, held in place by Eli's arm across the saddle. Clara sat straight and did not sleep. She watched the land go by with an expression that was hard to read, something between relief and a grief she was not done with yet. After a while, she spoke. "My papa's name is Reuben Marsh," she said. "In case someone needs to know." "Reuben Marsh," Eli repeated. "I'll remember." "He's tall," she said. "And he has a beard, but not a big one. He wore a brown coat. He was going to a town called," she paused, trying to remember. "Parsons Well. He said it was the closest town." Eli knew Parsons well. It was about 30 miles northeast of where they were. Not so far, for a man riding hard. But a man on foot, if his horse had gone lame or run off, that was different. And there was everything else that could happen between a man and 30 miles of open country. A broken leg. A fall. A river running higher than expected. Being caught out in weather. He did not say any of this to Clara. "That's good information," he said. "That helps." She seemed to find some comfort in that, in having information that helped. It was something she could do, and she was a child who needed to be able to do something. Garner's flat came into view in the late afternoon. It was not much to see. A main street with buildings on both sides, most of them in need of paint and several in need of more than paint. A water trough. Some horses tied outside the saloon. A few people moving on the street who looked at Eli and the 2 children with the flat curiosity of people who have seen strange things come through their town before. He rode to the building that had a sign reading General Store and Dry Goods because in his experience the person who ran a general store knew everything about a town and was more useful than anyone else when you needed information or help. The woman behind the counter was somewhere in her 60s, short and broad-shouldered, with gray hair pulled back and reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. Her name, he would learn, was Nora Fitch, and she had run this store for 22 years and had seen most of what life could put in front of a person. She looked at Eli when he came in with the two children and she did not ask a single unnecessary question. "Sit them there," she said, pointing to a bench against the wall. "I'll get water and something to eat." "They've had some," Eli said. "But more wouldn't hurt." No, it wouldn't. She was already moving. She was a woman who moved through what needed to be done without delay. Eli settled the children on the bench. Thomas looked around at the store with wide eyes, the shelves of goods, the smells of wood and spice and leather, and for the first time since Eli had found them, the boy's face changed. Something loosened in it. He pointed at a jar of hard candy on the shelf and looked at Eli. "Not mine to give," Eli said. "But maybe." Nora Fitch came back with water and cold biscuits and looked at the children eating and then looked at Eli with a question on her face. "Found them in a collapsed shack about 6 miles northeast," he said quietly, stepping away from the children. "Been there 2 days. Their father went to get help and didn't come back. Name is Reuben Marsh. Said he was heading to Parsons Well." Nora Fitch absorbed this. "Reuben Marsh," she said. She thought for a moment. "Don't know the name. But I know a man who goes between here and Parsons Well regular. He could ask around. That would help." She looked at the children again. Her expression was careful, not hard, but careful. The kind of careful that comes from knowing that children in situations like this one often had a story with a difficult ending, and that getting attached before you knew the ending was something you had to be thoughtful about. "Where are they going to stay?" she asked. Eli had not thought past this point. He had said he would get them to town. He was in town. He realized he had not thought further than that, and that further than that was now right in front of him. "Is there someone?" he asked. "In town. Who takes in?" "There's the Abernethy family," she said. "They've done it before. Good people. She's a kind woman." She paused. "But it's your call. You brought them in." He looked at Clara, who had finished her biscuit and was watching him across the store. She had been watching him since they arrived. She was doing the thing children do when they have learned that adults make decisions about their lives, and the best thing you can do is watch the adult carefully for signs of what those decisions will be. He walked back over to her. "There's a family here in town," he said. "Good people, I'm told. You and Thomas can stay with them while someone looks into finding your father." Clara thought about this. "Will you look for him?" she asked. "Or just someone else?" He sat down on the bench next to her. Thomas was leaning against her side, half in and half out of sleep again, holding a biscuit loosely. "I have a job I'm supposed to do," Eli said. He was being honest with her because she deserved honesty. "But I'll see what I can find out before I go." She accepted this. She was not happy about it, but she accepted it, which told him she was also a practical child who could understand the limits of what people could promise. That evening, he rode to see Hollis Drum. The rancher was a big man with a red face and the manner of someone who had not often been told no and had formed opinions about people who tried. He did not like that Eli wanted to delay the job. "Horses need to be moved," Hollis Drum said. "That's what I hired you for." 2 days, Eli said. "Give me 2 days. What is 2 days to me? 2 days is 2 days. Drum looked at him. "What's this about?" "Children," Eli said. 2 of them. I need to know their father is found before I ride on." Drum looked at him for a long moment. Something passed over the rancher's face that was not quite feeling but was adjacent to it, something that lived near feeling without being it. He had children of his own, Eli guessed. He did not ask. 2 days, Drum said finally. "But I don't pay for the wait. I didn't ask you to." He sent a message with a rider heading toward Parsons Well that same evening, asking after a man named Reuben Marsh, tall, bearded, brown coat, who may have passed through or come to harm. He went to see the Abernethy family. They were what Nora Fitch had said, good people. Margaret Abernethy was a woman of about 40 with a calm way about her that was not cold, just settled, like someone who has made peace with most things. She had 3 children of her own, 2 older and 1 about Clara's age. She showed Clara and Thomas a room with 2 beds and a quilt and a window that looked out on a small yard. Thomas looked at the bed for a moment, then climbed into it with his boots still on and was asleep in approximately the time it takes to close a door. Clara stood by the window. "I want to know when you find out something," she said to Eli. She said it without turning around. She was looking out at the yard. "I'll tell you as soon as I know anything," he said. She turned then, and he saw that she was holding herself very carefully, the way a person holds themselves when what they are feeling is large and they are not sure it will stay contained. "He promised he'd come back," she said. Her voice was steady, but it was the steadiness of effort. "I know," Eli said. "He always kept his promises before." There was nothing he could say to that. Nothing useful. He stood there in the room with the sleeping boy and the watching girl, and he did not fill the space with words that would not help. After a while, Clara turned back to the window. "Good night," she said. He went to the rooming house on the south end of the main street and paid for a room and lay on the bed without sleeping for a long time. He thought about the years he had spent moving. Not because he had to, though in the beginning he had to. But because somewhere along the way it had become what he did, and stopping had started to seem more difficult than continuing. He had been a man who passed through things. Towns, jobs, seasons. He was good at passing through. He thought about the girl at the window. He promised he'd come back. He always kept his promises before. There was a version of Eli Cade who would have left the next morning. Who would have told himself he had done what he could, gotten them to town, done more than most men would have. Who would have ridden to do Drum's job and not looked back. He had been that version, at various points. He knew it well. He lay on the bed and thought about it until the thinking stopped being useful, and then he slept. The message came back the next afternoon. The writer Eli had sent came back with a man. Not a message, a man. He was tall and bearded and wore a brown coat that had seen hard use, and he had a bandage on his right leg that went from his knee to his ankle, and he was riding a horse that was not his, borrowed from a family in Parsons Well. Reuben Marsh had made it to Parsons Well, but not in one piece. A horse kick on the second day of his walk, he had lost his horse to a broken leg and had been on foot, had broken 2 bones in his lower leg. He had been found by a family homesteading outside the town and had spent 5 days barely conscious with fever before he was well enough to speak clearly, to tell them about his children, to beg someone to go back for them. He had been sending riders for 2 days, but the land was wide and riders went different directions, and the one Eli had sent had crossed paths with the right people. Eli was standing in the street when the man rode in, and he watched the man get down from the horse, slow and careful because of the leg, and he watched the recognition move through Clara's face when she came around the corner of the general store and saw him. She ran. She was not a child who showed much. She had been careful and contained since Eli had found her. She had kept herself together through 2 days in a collapsed shack and several more days of not knowing. But she ran, and she was 8 years old, and she hit her father at about the level of his stomach and wrapped her arms around him, and Reuben Marsh bent down and held her with both arms and made a sound that was not a word. Thomas came around the corner behind her, slower, less sure, and Reuben saw him over Clara's shoulder and reached one arm out, and Thomas came to him and was folded in. Eli stood in the street and looked somewhere else for a while. Reuben Marsh found him later. The man moved carefully on his bad leg, using a stick for support. He was younger than Eli had pictured, mid-30s, maybe, with a face that had been through something and showed it. "You found them," Reuben said. "They found themselves," Eli said. "They made it 2 days. That girl of yours," he stopped. He was not much for long speeches. "She's something." Reuben looked at him the way men look at each other when language is not going to be enough and they both know it. "What do I owe you?" he said. It was not quite a question because he clearly had nothing, and they both knew that too. Nothing, Eli said. Reuben shook his head slowly. That's not right. It's right, Eli said. Get your children fed and get some rest. Fix your leg proper. That's what you owe. The man stood there. Eli could see he wanted to say something that would be equal to what he felt, and could not find it, which was the honest truth of the situation because there was nothing equal to it. Thank you, Reuben said at last. Just that. Simple. Take care of them, Eli said. He went to get Soot. Clara found him at the stable. She came in while he was saddling the mare and stood in the doorway and watched him work. He could feel her watching the way you feel weather coming, not with your eyes but with something else. You're leaving, she said. I've got work, he said. Job to do south of here. Horses to move. She came closer. She stood next to Soot and put her hand on the mare's nose and Soot allowed it, which Soot did not do with everyone. You said you'd stay until we were safe, Clara said. You're safe, he said. She thought about this. You kept your promise, she said. I try to, he said. She was quiet for a moment. Then, my papa kept his too. He did come back. It just took longer because of his leg. I know, Eli said. I saw. I wasn't sure, she said. When it was the second night and he hadn't come. I wasn't sure. He stopped what he was doing and looked at her. But I didn't leave Thomas, she said. Even when I wasn't sure. I stayed. I know you did, he said. She looked at him very directly. Because that's what you do, she said. When you say you'll stay, you stay. That's what makes it mean something. He looked at this 8-year-old girl who had learned one of the harder lessons of life in a collapsed shack in the middle of nowhere with no one but a frightened 5-year-old to keep her company. He did not have children. He had not had them. He had made choices, over the years, that had moved him away from the possibility. Not one big choice but many small ones, the accumulated weight of a life spent moving. He had not thought about it much, or had thought about it and put it somewhere he did not visit. He thought about it now. You did right, he said. That took courage. She nodded, accepting this without embarrassment. She was not a child who needed to be told she had done well, she knew she had done what the situation required, and that was different. Will you come back through here? She asked. Maybe, he said. It's possible. My papa says he's going to rebuild the shack, she said. Make it right this time. He has work with a man near here. We might stay. That's good, Eli said. She stepped back from Soot. Okay, she said. Goodbye, Eli. He finished saddling the mare. He led her out of the stable and got on, and he looked down at the girl standing in the stable doorway, still watching him. Goodbye, Clara, he said. He rode south. The job was simple, like he had expected. 3 horses, 40 miles, 2 days. Hollis Drum paid him and did not mention the delay. Eli rode back north, not because it was the direct way to anywhere he needed to be, but because it was the direction he went. He passed through Garner's flat 3 weeks later. He told himself it was on the way. It was not exactly on the way, but it was not far off. He asked about the Marsh family at the general store. Nora Fitch told him they were at the shack, or what was becoming not a shack anymore. Reuben had found steady work and had been rebuilding on weekends. The children were staying with the Abernethys through the winter. He rode out to the site. The shack was not finished but it was becoming something. New wood where the old had been. The fallen wall back up, straight this time, properly braced. The roof half replaced. Reuben Marsh was working on the roof when Eli rode up. He climbed down slow and careful, his leg was healing but not healed, and shook Eli's hand. Didn't expect to see you again, he said. I was passing through, Eli said. They looked at the structure together. "Coming along," Eli said. "It is," Reuben said. "Takes time. Most things do." Eli looked at the walls and the new wood and the careful work of a man making something solid out of something that had fallen down. There was something in that, in the act of it, that he had not been paying attention to for a long time. The building rather than the passing through. He stayed 3 days and helped with the roof. He had not planned to. He had planned to look, satisfy himself that things were all right, and ride on. But Reuben had a bad leg and the work went slowly alone, and Eli was good with his hands and did not have anywhere he needed to be in 3 days that would not wait. On the second evening, Clara came out from the Abernethys to bring food, because Margaret Abernethy sent food with her every day for her father. She saw Eli on the roof and stopped. Then she smiled. It was not a big smile. It was the smile of a child who does not smile easily, and so when she smiles it means something different than when easy-smiling children smile. "I thought you were gone," she said. "I came back," he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she set the food down on a post and came and stood near the base of the ladder. "My papa says that when the house is done we might stay permanent," she said. "That would be good," Eli said. "He says there's work around here. Good work. And the Abernethys said we can come to their church." "That sounds like a plan," Eli said. She picked up the food again and brought it to her father, who came down from the other side of the roof. Eli stayed on his side, working, listening to the two of them talk below, the sound of a father and daughter finding their way back to ordinary things, to talking about small things, about church and neighbors and whether the new wall was straight. The ordinary music of a family that had almost come apart and was holding itself together now, board by board. He worked until the light went and then sat on the new roof and looked at the wide sky turning colors he did not have names for. He thought about passing through. He thought about what it would mean to not pass through. He thought about what it cost and what it gave, each choice, and whether a man could change the habits of 50-some years. He did not answer that question that evening. But he kept working the next day. And when he left on the 4th day, he told Reuben he would be back in the spring, because he knew of a man selling good timber not too far, and they could finish the house proper with the right materials. He was not sure, when he said it, whether he would do it. He was sure by the time he had ridden 3 miles. He would do it. He would come back in the spring. He would help finish the house. He did not know what came after that, because some things you could only see when you were close enough to them. But he had made a promise, and he had told a girl that when you say you'll stay, you stay. That's what makes it mean something. He was 50-some years old and he had not always been the man he should have been. But he could be that man for a spring. And then, maybe, for whatever came after. Soot moved beneath him, steady and sure, carrying him south for now, with north in the future, and the sky above was wide in every direction, which was the thing about sky, it did not end, and neither did the choices you could make inside it. He rode. The wind moved over the grass and bent it low and then let it stand again. And somewhere behind him, in a town called Garner's Flat, a girl who had stayed when it would have been easier not to was walking back to a warm house with her father's voice in her ears, learning that some people come back, and some promises hold, and that the world, sometimes, when you have held on long enough, gives you something back.